The attack. The stars above Vexor 9 shimmered like tiny white scars in the blackness of space. It was a quiet colony world, far from Earth, one of many places where humans had settled in the vast galaxy. The people here worked hard, built their homes, and tried to live peacefully. But tonight, peace was shattered. A distress signal blinked red on the colony's main communication console. A security officer on night duty frowned, leaning forward. The message was weak, but it was coming from a small alley behind the market district. He tapped his earpiece. "We have an alert. Sending a drone feed now." The drone's camera flickered to life, and what it showed made his blood turn to ice. A girl lay on the ground, motionless. Her clothes were torn, her face bruised and swollen. Blood dripped from a cut on her forehead. The security officer jumped from his chair and called for medics. Emily Carter, a young girl, no more than 14, had been attacked. The crowd gathered as the medics rushed in. Murmurs filled the night air. Who did this? Someone whispered. A few people already knew the answer. The Vexari. The Vexari's cruelty. The Vexari were a warrior race. Tall, reptilian, with sharp claws and eyes that burned like embers. They saw humans as weak, an inferior species who did not belong among the stars. And now, they had hurt a child. One of the colonists clenched his fists. "They always do this," he hissed. "They think they can get away with anything because the Galactic Council won't stop them." The Galactic Council was supposed to keep the peace. They made the rules. They decided what was fair. But whenever humans asked for help, the Council just ignored them. A man stepped forward. Captain Elias Ford, a veteran soldier, now a leader on Vexor 9. His face was hard, his voice steady. "We need proof." Someone held up a holo recording from a nearby surveillance drone. The screen lit up, showing the truth. The footage played. Emily was walking home, carrying a small bag of supplies. A group of Vexari thugs stepped in her path. They surrounded her. Laughter echoed through the streets. One of them shoved her. She fell. When she tried to get up, another kicked her. The worst part, they weren't stealing from her. They weren't robbers. They were just having fun. The Council's response. The next day, the humans of Vexor 9 sent the evidence to the Galactic Council. They demanded justice. The Vexari responsible should be punished. The Council responded with cold indifference. "This is an unfortunate incident," the message said. "The Vexari have assured us it was a misunderstanding. No further action is necessary." A misunderstanding. The humans read the words, fists shaking with rage. Captain Ford crushed the holopad in his hands. His voice was like steel. They'd beat a child and call it a misunderstanding. The people around him murmured in agreement. This wasn't the first time. Humans had been pushed, insulted, even killed. And every time, the Galactic Council turned a blind eye. But something was different now. This time, the whole Earth saw it. Earth sees the truth. The footage of Emily's attack spread like wildfire across human space. Millions of people saw it. Anger turned into outrage. In the United Earth Military Command, the highest-ranking generals watched the footage in silence. No one spoke. Then, a voice broke the silence. A calm, dangerous voice. They touched one of ours. An older general, a legend of Earth's wars, leaned forward. His eyes were cold as a dying star. "Now we send the wolves. The Reapers are coming." On the dark side of Earth's moon, a fleet was preparing. Not just any fleet. The Reaper Corps. The most feared soldiers Earth had ever created. They were the ones sent when diplomacy had failed, when the enemy needed to be taught a lesson they would never forget. Now, they had one mission. Make the Vexari understand fear. And for the first time in history, the galaxy would learn why humanity was never meant to be underestimated. The arrival of the Reapers. The sky went dark. The Vexari warlords sat in their great hall, laughing over a feast. They did not fear humans. Why would they? Humans were newcomers to the galactic stage, a species barely a few centuries into space travel. They were weaker, softer, too dependent on their fragile morals and their diplomatic ways. When the humans cried for justice after the attack on the girl, the Vexari barely paid attention. They should have begged. But then, the sky went dark. At first, it seemed like a glitch in the planetary shields, a flicker, a distortion in the upper atmosphere. The Vexari generals looked up, frowning, as the stars disappeared one by one. Then came the whispers. Not voices, but digital transmissions, encrypted signals bouncing across the galactic network, slicing through firewalls like they weren't even there. They carried one message. You heard a child. Silence fell over the great hall. Then, alarms screamed. They came without warning. The first explosion wasn't even visible. It was felt, an electromagnetic pulse that shut down every Vexari warship in orbit in an instant. Panic spread through the fleet. Commanders shouted orders. Engineers scrambled to restart systems. But it was too late. They were already here. From the darkness of space, black warships emerged, cutting through the void like silent predators. These were not ordinary human ships. They carried no insignia, no diplomatic beacons, just a single burning red symbol on their hulls. A skull with wings. The Reapers. Before the Vexari fleet could react, the first strike landed. It wasn't a traditional attack. No massive plasma barrages, no warning shots. Instead, the Reapers dropped soldiers. They didn't invade from orbit. They didn't send down landing crafts. They fell. From the sky, black armored figures descended like demons, dropping at terminal velocity. No parachutes, no landing pods. And when they hit the ground, they kept moving. The wolves are loose. In the capital city of Juxar Prime, the streets were quiet, until a Vexari patrol heard a sharp whistle. They turned. A single figure stood at the edge of an alleyway, motionless. Black armor, a matte visor reflecting the firelight. The Vexari laughed. A human. Alone. The human tilted his head slightly. Then he whispered something. Not in words. Through his helmet comms. And then the world exploded. Buildings collapsed as hidden charges ignited. The ground split apart as underground tunnels, dug days ago, before the attack even started, began spewing human soldiers into the streets. The Reapers had been here the whole time, waiting, watching, planning. And now, they unleashed hell. The Reapers' message. Across the planet, Vexari outposts fell within minutes. Military bases were silent tombs before the commanders even realized they were under attack. Warships, dead in space, were boarded and taken without a shot fired. This wasn't war. This was punishment. And then, across every Vexari communication channel, a single message played. This is not a war. There will be no negotiations. No surrender. You took something from us. Now we take from you. The Reapers had arrived. And the galaxy would never be the same again. The Vexari counterattack. The roar of a dying empire. The Vexari Empire had never known fear. For centuries, they had ruled with claws and fire, conquering weaker species, breaking civilizations that dared to stand against them. Now, for the first time in their history, they were losing. And they did not understand why. The humans had never been warriors in the eyes of the galaxy. They were traders, explorers, soft creatures who built with words instead of weapons. But these humans, the ones who came in the night and turned entire colonies to ashes, were something else, something primal. The Reapers had destroyed supply lines, infiltrated fortresses, erased entire Vexari fleets without warning. The Empire could not ignore it anymore. This was not an uprising. This was a reckoning. And the Vexari would not go down without a fight. A trap for the Reapers. The Vexari High Command gathered in the war chambers of Sal Rath, their strongest military station. It floated in the void like a steel beast, its spires bristling with planet cracker cannons, surrounded by the largest fleet ever assembled. A scared general, Lord Vashkor, slammed his fist against the table. "Enough," he roared. "We have let these vermin think they are our equals. It ends today." They had prepared a trap. They knew humans relied on precision, stealth, and psychological warfare. The Reapers moved in the shadows, but this time, the Vexari would force them into the light. The plan was simple. Spread false intelligence. Make the humans believe that a Vexari war council was meeting on an abandoned moon base near Xalrath. Wait for the Reapers to take the bait. Once they arrived, surround them with the full might of the Vexari Empire and wipe them from existence. "Let them come," Vashkor growled, his fangs glinting in the war room's dim light. "This time, we are ready." The battle begins and ends in fire. Days later, the silent hum of cloaked human warships rippled through the void near Xalrath. The Reapers had taken the bait. A squadron of black destroyers broke formation, heading toward the decoy moonbase. Vashkor watched from his command throne, his claws gripping the arms of his chair. Now, the Vexari fleet decloaked, thousands of warships cutting through space like a storm of steel. Missiles and plasma cannons roared to life, unleashing a hellstorm of destruction on the approaching human fleet. The trap had worked. Or so they thought, because something was wrong. The human ships did not scatter. They did not retreat. They simply waited. And then, Vashkor's blood ran cold. The real attack wasn't coming from the front. It was coming from within. The wolves were already inside. Xalrath shook violently, alarms blaring through every corridor. Explosions erupted deep inside the station, not from outside attacks, but from inside its own defense systems. Security feeds flickered. Vexari officers screamed into comms. Entire weapons platforms were going offline, sabotaged by something unseen. And then the power died. For a brief moment, the station hung in silence. Then came the gunfire. In the dark corridors of Xalrath, the Reapers moved like ghosts. They had never been in those ships outside. That was just a distraction. They had already been inside the station for days. Every Vexari who thought they were the hunter was about to learn what it felt like to be the prey. The last words of a dying general. Vashkor staggered through the burning corridors, his command throne nothing but molten slag. His warriors, the best the Empire had to offer, lay dead around him. A voice crackled through his helmet. A human voice. "You called us weak." Vashkor turned, raising his plasma blade. A black armored figure stood before him, visor reflecting the flames. A Reaper. The human tilted their head slightly. Unimpressed. Unafraid. The Vexari general bared his fangs. "We are warriors," he snarled. "You are just scavengers, crawling in the dark like vermin." The Reaper's helmet turned slightly, as if considering his words. Then, in a voice as cold as death, they replied, "No, we are the reason the dark exists." A single gunshot echoed through the ruined halls. And with that, the last hope of the Vexari Empire died. The trap had been set, but the humans had not walked into it. They had turned it into a grave. The war escalates. The silence before the storm. Across the galaxy, silence spread like a sickness. The Vexari had once been a name that inspired fear, a warrior race that had conquered and crushed weaker civilizations for centuries. But now, their name was whispered in hushed terror. Entire fleets had vanished. Planets once thought untouchable lay in ruins, their defense grids shut down before a single shot was fired. The Galactic Council watched with growing horror. This was not a war. This was an extinction event in slow motion. And Earth had not spoken a single word. The day the Council begged. In the great halls of the Galactic Council, alien ambassadors gathered, their voices a mix of panic and desperation. The Vexari High Seat, once the most arrogant voice in the chamber, stood empty. It was a warning. The Council had ignored humanity's first cry for justice. They had dismissed the attack on a child as a misunderstanding. Now the humans did not come to talk. They only came to erase their enemies. A trembling voice broke the silence. "We must stop them." All eyes turned to the speaker, an elder of the Rithani, a species that had once ruled the stars before the Vexari pushed them to the brink of extinction. The irony was bitter. The Rithani had once begged the Council to stop the Vexari's expansion. The Council had refused, saying it was not their place to interfere. Now the same Council stood before humanity's rising storm, and they begged for mercy. The silence stretched. Then, the Council leader made a decision. They would send a message to Earth. They would plead for peace. The human response. The message was sent through every known diplomatic channel. The request was simple. Please stop. The galaxy held its breath, waiting for Earth's reply. It came in the form of a single transmission, broadcasted across every system, every outpost, every world. It was a video. The screen flickered, and a familiar image appeared. Emily Carter, the human girl who had been attacked. She sat in a hospital bed, her face still bruised but healing. Her hands clutched a small stuffed bear. And then a voice. Calm, cold, final. "You ignored us when we asked for justice." The video changed. Footage of Vexari warriors laughing, beating her in an alley. The voice continued. "You called us weak." The footage changed again, showing the ruins of Vexari warships, their wreckage drifting through space. "You thought we would bow." The final image appeared. A burning Vexari city, its skyline collapsing in flames. "We do not bow. We do not forgive. And we do not stop." The transmission ended. Earth had spoken. There would be no peace. The Vexari's last hope. In the heart of the Vexari Empire, the last remaining warlords gathered in desperation. They had underestimated humanity. They had treated them like prey. Now, they faced something they couldn't understand. A species that did not just fight back, but hunted those who wronged them. With their fleets in ruins and their planets burning, they had one final plan. A last, desperate strike. Their target? Earth itself. The war was no longer about victory. It was about revenge. But what the Vexari didn't know, what they couldn't understand, was that they were not marching toward Earth's defeat. They were marching toward their own annihilation, and humanity was already waiting for them. 8. The silence before the storm. Across the galaxy, silence spread like a sickness. The Vexari had once been a name that inspired fear, a warrior race that had conquered and crushed weaker civilizations for centuries. But now their name was whispered in hushed terror. Entire fleets had vanished. Planets once thought untouchable lay in ruins, their defense grids shut down before a single shot was fired. The Galactic Council watched with growing horror. This was not a war. This was an extinction event in slow motion. And Earth had not spoken a single word. The day the Council begged. In the great halls of the Galactic Council, alien ambassadors gathered, their voices a mix of panic and desperation. The Vexari High Seat, once the most arrogant voice in the chamber, stood empty. It was a warning. The Council had ignored humanity's first cry for justice. They had dismissed the attack on a child as a misunderstanding. Now the humans did not come to talk. They only came to erase their enemies. A trembling voice broke the silence. "We must stop them." All eyes turned to the speaker, an elder of the Rithani, a species that had once ruled the stars before the Vexari pushed them to the brink of extinction. The irony was bitter. The Rithani had once begged the Council to stop the Vexari's expansion. The Council had refused, saying it was not their place to interfere. Now, the same Council stood before humanity's rising storm, and they begged for mercy. The silence stretched. Then, the Council leader made a decision. They would send a message to Earth. They would plead for peace. The human response. The message was sent through every known diplomatic channel. The request was simple. Please stop. The galaxy held its breath, waiting for Earth's reply. It came in the form of a single transmission, broadcasted across every system, every outpost, every world. It was a video. The screen flickered, and a familiar image appeared. Emily Carter, the human girl who had been attacked. She sat in a hospital bed, her face still bruised but healing. Her hands clutched a small stuffed bear. And then a voice. Calm, cold, final. You ignored us when we asked for justice. The video changed. Footage of Vexari warriors laughing, beating her in an alley. The voice continued. You called us weak. The footage changed again, showing the ruins of Vexari warships, their wreckage drifting through space. You thought we would bow. The final image appeared. A burning Vexari city, its skyline collapsing in flames. We do not bow. We do not forgive. And we do not stop. The transmission ended. Earth had spoken. There would be no peace. The Vexari's last hope. In the heart of the Vexari Empire, the last remaining warlords gathered in desperation. They had underestimated humanity. They had treated them like prey. Now they faced something they couldn't understand. A species that did not just fight back, but hunted those who wronged them. With their fleets in ruins and their planets burning, they had one final plan. A last, desperate strike. Their target, Earth itself. The war was no longer about victory. It was about revenge. But what the Vexari didn't know, what they couldn't understand, was that they were not marching toward Earth's defeat. They were marching toward their own annihilation, and humanity was already waiting for them. Earth's final warning. The moment the Vexari realized they were doomed. It was supposed to be humanity's final hour. The Vexari remnant fleet, the last desperate survivors of a dying empire, had done the unthinkable. They had gathered every warship, every mercenary, every weapon they had left, and pointed them at Earth. The plan was simple. If they could not win, they would make sure humanity burned with them. The fleet emerged from hyperspace like a storm of fire, a wall of battleships stretching across the void, their cannons glowing with the energy of 1,000 dying stars. Vexari commanders roared over comms, broadcasting their final declaration of war to the galaxy. We will burn your world as you have burned ours. Then they waited. For Earth's defenses to activate, for human fleets to scramble in panic, for the desperate last stand of an overwhelmed species. But nothing happened. No alarms, no frantic broadcasts, just silence. And that was when the first seeds of fear took root in the Vexari commanders' hearts. Earth was not panicking. Earth was not afraid. Earth was waiting. A world that was never defenseless. Then, the stars blinked out. No, not the stars. Ships. Massive, monolithic warships, painted in obsidian and crimson, emerged from the void. Hidden fleets that had been waiting in Earth's shadow the entire time. They dwarfed the Vexari armada. Their weapons did not glow with fury. They pulsed with cold inevitability. Earth had never been undefended. They had simply let the Vexari come. And now it was too late to run. A single transmission cut through the empty space between the fleets. A voice, calm and absolute. Your mistake was thinking we were like you. The final message. The Galactic Council, watching from their distant homeworlds, tried one last time to intervene. A desperate transmission was sent to Earth, to the human fleet, to their mysterious Reaper commanders. Spare them, the Council pleaded. They are broken. The war is over. Another silence followed. Then Earth replied. They came for our children. It was not a threat, not a declaration of war. Just a simple statement of fact. A statement that carried with it the weight of a species that had learned, long ago, that mercy was a privilege, not a right. The last Vexari warlord, standing on the bridge of his flagship, realized, too late, what was about to happen. He whispered, not to his crew, not to the council, but to himself. We should have killed them when we had the chance. But the truth was, they had never had the chance. Not against this humanity. Not against the species that did not seek war, but once forced into one, did not stop until their enemies were nothing but whispers of the past. The human fleet moved, and the Vexari Empire ceased to exist. The last stand. The death of kings. The last Vexari warlord stood in the ruins of his throne room, staring at the burning sky above his homeworld. Flames rained from the heavens. The stars, once a symbol of his empire's endless conquest, were now buried behind the wreckage of his own fleet. His people had ruled for centuries. Now, they were nothing more than dying embers, snuffed out by the cold, unrelenting hand of earth. And still, he refused to kneel. His claws clenched. His voice, though ragged, still carried the weight of his ancestors. We are warriors. He spat into the fire. We do not beg. But the darkness around him did not answer. Because Earth did not come for surrenders. It came for conclusions. The human way of war. In the final battle for Vexor Prime, the Reapers did not fight like the armies of old. They did not surround the planet and offer terms. They did not bombard it from orbit in a show of power. Instead, they cut it apart piece by piece, infiltrating, disrupting, dismantling the empire from within. Communications went first. The Vexari fleet tried to coordinate their defense, only to find that their own signals had been hijacked, replaced with nothing but dead air and echoes of human transmissions. Then the power grids failed. Entire cities plunged into darkness, their defenses useless, their weapons silenced. Finally, the Reapers came. Not in a wave of fire, but in shadows, in whispers, in the slow, methodical removal of every last chain of command. The Vexari capital, once a symbol of strength, fell in a single night of silence. The humans didn't fight a war. They ended it. The last warrior stands alone. The warlord, the last true leader of the Vexari Empire, stood among the corpses of his elite guards. The palace that had once housed generations of conquerors was now nothing more than a tomb. A sound echoed through the chamber. Not an explosion, not gunfire, just footsteps. Slow, steady, certain. From the shadows, a single Reaper stepped forward. No army, no banners, just one. The Vexari warlord let out a bitter laugh. Not even a battalion, he snarled. Not even a fleet to honor the death of my people. The Reaper's visor tilted slightly. Unmoved. You are not worth a fleet. Silence. For the first time, the Vexari leader felt something foreign creep into his chest. Not anger. Not hatred. Something far worse. Realization. This had never been a war. This had been a hunt. And now, it was over. A single gunshot echoed through the shattered throne room. The last king of the Vexari fell. The war was finished. But the message Earth had sent would never be forgotten. And the galaxy would never make the same mistake again. The end, and a new fear. A galaxy without its monsters. The war was over. The Vexari Empire, once a force of terror, was nothing more than a scattering of shattered warships and burning homeworlds. There was no surrender, no peace treaty, only silence. For centuries, the Vexari had been the predators of the galaxy. Their name had been spoken in fear. Their fleets had crushed entire civilizations. Now, they were nothing more than ashes drifting in the void. And the galaxy knew who had done it. Earth, the species they had laughed at. The species they had called weak. The species that had turned out to be the deadliest of them all. The Reapers vanish. No one saw the Reapers leave. One moment, their war fleets hovered over Vexari ruins, their crimson symbols burning like an omen. Then, without a word, they were gone. No occupation, no declaration of conquest. Just emptiness where an empire used to be. The Council tried to send messages to Earth. tried to ask for negotiations, for a future of peace, but Earth did not reply. Earth did not need to, because the lesson had been taught, and it would never be forgotten. The fear that remained. In the weeks that followed, the surviving galactic races whispered among themselves. They had always feared the Vexari, but now they realized something far worse. The Vexari had been conquerors. They had wanted power, wealth, territory. But the humans had not come for any of those things. They had not come to rule. They had not come to expand. They had come for vengeance. And when it was done, they simply left. No demands, no warnings, just a silent, unspoken message to every species that still lived among the stars. Do not touch what is ours. And that message would echo forever.